You everyone, if you could resume your seats, and we have the Te Kaha Project Board in front of us, Barry Bragg, Carolyn Harvey-Tier from Venues Otatahi, and we also have David Kennedy, who's the Te Kaha Chief Executive, but there are others in the room who can support this presentation when we get to questions, so thank you. Are you on? Are you online?
No, just
Yep.
that's it. You are
Hello now.
You are now.
I just want to acknowledge we have other Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited board members with us, Jane Hidia and Gil Cox in the audience. Richard Peebles is online, and also, as you mentioned, Mayor, we have Lisa Curran here from Simpson Grierson, answering any matters around the legal assurance, and we also have Peter Neman, who's online, as mentioned before, an advisor to the board, and also has provided the gateway review for Treasury under the funding agreement. Okay, so just want to do, might have gone the wrong way here. Okay, so the outline of the presentation is a quick recap, really just building on the recap that Mary gave this morning. Also, Carolyn will give a presentation around the developed design, reconciliation to the design fundamentals. Also want to acknowledge, and we may mention this later in the presentation, we've had a bit of time to reflect on the community consultation. I think there's a number of comments about the understanding of the project, and we'll work forward on consultation and communication with the community to ensure they understand both the design and the contractual arrangements. After that, we'll give a quick summary of the Dnc contract and cover off both the price, the program, some of the key terms, and talk through the assurance process we have been through, and also refer to the way forward. If we get a yes, we've got a project delivery organisation in place, and there are certain key fundamentals for the Dnc phase, which will be high priority for both the board, the Project Delivery Limited, and VO. And then we'll come to the recommendations. So again, a recap, there were three critical items at the beginning that were very clear to the board when we were appointed in September 2020. This project was a three-way partnership with the Kaha Project Delivery Limited delivering the project in close consultation with Venues Otatahi as the operator. Jointly together, we have verified the scope as we have been working through this process. Second key requirement was regular, ongoing consultation communication with council. And thirdly, there were some key aspects of the Dnc contract that needed to be achieved in order to make this recommendation to council. So those fundamentals were Venues Otatahi and Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited were to verify the conceptual design, preliminary design, develop design, make presentations to council on those matters, and those designs were submitted by the contractor against the design fundamentals, and that set the specification in the Dnc contract. That contractor was to have sole responsibility for detailed design and construction to deliver the specification. Again, I'm just reminding, these were the expectations set in September 2020. We would have a lump sum contract with the contractor responsible for cost escalations for materials and labour. We would have the contractor responsible for program risk, and there would be very few council retained risks during the Dnc stage, and there would be sufficient contingency to take care of those risks should they eventuate. And you wanted the Te Kaha Project Delivery Board to give you confidence that we could deliver the project within the total project budget. So in March 2021, we made a recommendation to the council to appoint B6 WAPAC. There were 3 international consortiums that participated in the market testing process, and the recommendation we made was B6 WAPAC as the head party of the consortium, being Fulton Hogan and South Base Construction as part of that consortium. Council approved executing the pre-contract services agreement, which really set in motion this journey around concept design all the way to what we've achieved today. August 2021, we had feedback around the conceptual design and the likely costs of the project. There was a resetting process that took place that began in July and was confirmed in August. That reset the budget and also reconfirmed the design fundamentals at the conceptual design stage. At that time, we flagged the risk around concerns on cost escalation due to COVID, and we've red flagged and we discussed an amount that needed to be acknowledged given that risk. From August 2021 through to May 2022, we went through that design process, so we were back in front of you in January to present the preliminary design, and we advised you at that stage that it was almost certain that we would be using that we would need to access additional funding, the funding that we had, the amount that we had flagged in August 2021, because of what was occurring in the marketplace around COVID. Obviously, since that time, we had the Ukraine crisis, and we've given you several briefings around that. We got to 27th of May 2022, which was 2 weeks later than the original timeline, where we received the final bid from B6 WAPAC. At that stage, it was non-compliant. And over the last 4 to 5 weeks, we've been working through that with B6 WAPAC. We reached an agreement last Friday, and we now have a Dnc contract, which is compliant with the strategy that was agreed in 2020. Just hand over to Carolyn to take us through the design reconciliation.
All right, thank you. Good morning. I think we're still good morning. Look, I will do a bit of a presentation further to our presentation last week to reconcile both the investment case design fundamentals as well as the strategic design fundamentals with the current developed design. What we've also done in parallel with reconciling these design fundamentals is also assess the financial model as per the investment case. We won't be deep diving into that today as part of this reconciliation, but we'll certainly take questions obviously further to our discussion last week. Just a couple of things also to note. I think it's really, really important to remember that the purpose of these large community facilities is not only about the economic impact and any commercial return. It is around the social, cultural and economic impact. Large facilities have such a broad range of impact for our communities, and Te Kaha certainly gives us that. And it will be such a place of coming together. And I think it's nice to be able to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about design, because it is obviously the most fundamental part of the decision you have to make, with the exception of the funding associated. So just a bit of a recap on the investment case design fundamentals. So one of the main fundamentals was this was a multi-purpose arena. So not just sporting events, but entertainment events, community events, corporate events, and facilitated for an all-round experience with a covered roof. A rectangle field of play with natural turf. Obviously a little bit of a challenge at times with having a roof and natural turf, but it was certainly an aspiration for this arena, and one that will set this arena apart on a world stage. A minimum of 30,000 seats made up of 25,000 permanent and 5,000 temporary. A northern stage pocket, so keeping that large staging off the field of play to ensure turf health. A minimum of 36,000 capacity in concert mode, so having your GA on the field of play. Acoustic quality, and a level 1 U-shaped concourse, so to give you that ability to walk around the arena. And then to revisit the strategic design fundamentals, the venue needs to be commercially viable. It needs to be able to attract a diverse range of multifaceted events. It needs to consider the future of events and not just be a point in time. And it needs to be able to attract commercial partnerships. It needs to be unique. It needs to be competitive. It needs to be operationally functional. So the underpin of every experience is that you have a simple and easy access to and around the venue, not only for guests but for clients. It needs a good number of well-appointed amenities, and again, that really smooth ingress and egress. The guest experience. So the design needs to deliver an enhanced guest experience, quality acoustics, industry best practice comfort for seating, sight lines, and it needs to enable the ability to deliver a large, diverse and quality food offering. Accessibility and inclusivity. So the design needs to enable access to the same experience for all members of our community. Again, it needs to be multi-use. The multi-use functionality of the venue will enable the maximising of this opportunity for the region, and it will be a competitive point of difference. And sustainability. Sustainability not only needs to be inherent in the design of the venue, but it needs to enable a sustainable operation. And based on our reconciliation at Develop Design, Te Kaha is meeting not only all of the strategic design fundamentals, as well as those investment case design fundamentals. Economic benefit. So these are of note, these are 2019 numbers and based on the event forecast in the investment case. So over the life of the asset, which is 25 years, and 25 years of the life of the asset, which is a treasury standard for stadiums, is 462.2 million. Now, some of those highlights, so 3.6 million per annum from large sporting events, 10 million per annum from large concert events, entertainment events, and 5 million per annum from other events. Now, to give you an example of a Forsyth Bar example. So Ed Sheeran played 3 nights in a row at Forsyth Bar. There was a $38 million economic impact for that region over 3 days. Now 70% of the people that went to that event travelled there, and half of those people were from Canterbury. So it just gives you an example of these numbers are based on a relatively conservative event forecast, but there are points in time like that you can see a real significant and genuine economic impact for the region. In addition, and what wasn't reflected in the investment case, is Venues Ōtautahi have an in-house catering model, and we source around 85% at the minute of all of our food and beverage from the local region. And when Te Kaha comes online, we expect that to be about another $3.5 million per annum of direct economic benefit to the region. And we'll also look to employ around 600 to 800 casual staff across the venue portfolio. So we'll just walk through some of the venue highlights. You'll see here at the northern end of Te Kaha, the public realm. Now what the public realm enables is a fan zone, so that could be on event day. If you think about things like the Australian Open, the fan zone is actually almost just as big a part of the event. Community events, it's a really welcoming, warm space for things like markets, etc. And really to activate that part of the city outside of event day. I know there's nervousness around that being a relatively heartless building in the centre of the city, but as you'll see from the event forecast, there are around 180 to 229 events per annum, as well as having this wonderful space that can be activated outside of event day. From a commercial perspective, there's the opportunity to have digital billboards in the public realm, and from a competitive advantage perspective, there's a large boneyard in the public realm, which is where promoters can store large concert equipment. Now, a key commercial competitive proposition for arenas is that promoters need to be able to get in and out really quickly. They want to get back on the road, and so the ability to store large kit on site is a real advantage. There's a large urban forest. There's around 220,000 square metres of, I could be wrong on that number, of vegetation across the site. There's also scooter and bike parking to encourage a more sustainable way of transporting to the venue. And the cultural narrative will be reflected in the design in the public realm, as well as the external facade of the venue. And safety is absolutely critical, so CEPTED principles have underpinned the design of the public realm. Accessibility and inclusivity. As we've talked about, the design must enable the same experience for every single member of our community, and Te Kaha certainly delivers that. There are 39 accessible car parks, so from a compliance perspective, based on the number of seats at the compliance level of car parking for accessible patrons is 2. So you can see it's a far enhanced and a far easier way to get to and stay at the venue. There are 5 accessible routes across the public realm versus the compliance level of 1. And there are 140 accessible seats, which is 40% beyond the minimum required. And the important thing to note around those accessible seats is they are in all areas of the venue, so not just in one part. It is the exact same experience and access to. There are 3 parenting rooms. There are more than double the minimum standard of accessible amenities, 25 accessible all-gender toilets, a changing places toilet, and all F&B counters, so from a guest perspective as well as a staff perspective, are all at accessible height. There are accessible turnstiles in close proximity to lifts. All of the signage is best practice from a blind and low vision perspective, and all of the lifts are within 20 to 30 metres of main entrances. So you can see from where the design is at the moment, it really is enabling that enhanced and same experience for all members of our community. So some highlights around corporate events, which really showcase the versatility of Te Kaha and the ability to attract a diverse and range of corporate experiences. So there's good quality DAS and Wi-Fi. There's a 1,150 square metre corporate lounge, which enables a seated banquet for about 690 and over 1,000 for a standard cocktail dinner or a classroom-style conference type of event. There are 2 satellite kitchens and an operable wall, so you can divide the space, as well as around a 500 square metre terrace out the front, which again is that wonderful, really unique experience and a really competitive proposition for corporate events and something quite different. The ground and level 1 concourse, so there is the ability to hold trade shows and expos. Again, that really connected concourse is a real difference for this venue. And in the level 1 concourse, you can always see the field of play from the concourse, which again is a really special way to continue to experience what's happening out in the bowl. There are corporate suites, 23 corporate suites, so from a corporate event perspective, that's good for breakout spaces or meeting spaces and corporate events, smaller corporate events, as well as offering what it would normally do from a sponsorship and other corporate experience on event day. So entertainment events, you'll see there in the picture an example of what a reduced concert mode could look like. It'd be slightly different, that's an older picture there, but it gives you the experience of the bowl. So the southern end of Te Kaha has a hard section of roof, and it'll have a mother grid and the ability to rig a curtain in behind the stage, which would be the back of the stage on the 22 line. So again, looking back and creating that arena type of experience. From a capacity perspective in that reduced mode, it's around 13,800, which again is that point of difference from the Christchurch Arena, for example, which has a capacity of about 8,888. From a large concert capacity perspective, the capacity at the minute is 36,800. That will always vary slightly, just given stage setups and sight lines, etc. But that's the capacity at the moment in a large concert mode. And in terms of the event forecast, and as per the investment case, we're forecasting 3 large concerts, 4 reduced mode concerts, and a mega event every 6 years. Again, that multi-use is enabled by the roof and the current design. So things like boxing, tennis, esports, nitro circus type of events. And again, what we're seeing in the design is a really unique, competitive venue, one innovative in design, but one that is going to be uniquely local. And it is a really stunning opportunity for our region. Sustainability. So look, the project aims to support measurable action in climate change and will do over its lifespan. Venues Otatahi are working with Toitu around Carbon Mark and Enviromark certification, and this will include Te Kaha, not only now in terms of design, but obviously when it becomes operational. Te Kaha will be an all-electric site, so there won't be any fossil fuels used on site. So that includes all-electric cooking, all-electric forklifts, etc. So again, albeit it has an implication for utilities, there are no fossil fuels on site. There will be solar panels, so the ability to put solar panels on the on parts of the structure to offset some of that utilities costs, and also in a more sustainable way. There'll be high efficiency LED lighting. The F&B strategy will ensure lockdowns, close downs in between events to preserve energy. We will have a target of 80% diversion to landfill rate. That will be a venues auto operational target. And the waste management strategy will include predominantly compostables for packaging, reusables with some recyclables, and we'll work to shift behaviour to where we can acquire more and more compostable products and try and move toward more compostable and reusable versus recyclable. I've touched on the public realm, so that increased biodiversity with native urban forest, and there's the accurate number of 20,000 square metres of vegetation. I was a little aspirational on the first one. And again, some of those behaviour changes with not having car parking on site, really encouraging walking, encouraging scootering, rideshare, etc., to change those behaviours around private car use. Sporting events. So you'll see there an image where the temporary seats are in. So you've got the 5,000 temporary seats at the northern end, in addition to the 25,000 permanent seats around the bowl. Again, the covered arena just enhances the guest experience, and from an acoustic perspective, and we'll touch on it in the guest experience, but it's a challenge to get a balance between what acoustically for a sporting event you want lively sound, whereas for a more entertainment event you want more of a muffled sound. But in the design, I think we've achieved, and you'll see comparable to other global arenas, a really good balance between the two, and a really good quality acoustic for entertainment events, which not only enhances the guest experience, but makes it a good experience for artists and their will to come back. You'll see then, again, as per the investment case, an annual All Blacks match in the forecast, 7 Super Rugby, 5 domestic rugby, 1 football, 1 rugby league, and that mega event, so something like a World Cup or a FIFA, etc., from a sporting perspective. And again, that natural turf. So food and beverage, I know that many of you will have enjoyed the experience at the temporary stadium, but the temporary stadium has around 4 food and beverage units, and we add in to meet demand vendors as well. Te Kaha will have 32 food and beverage outlets. So when you think about that from an experience perspective, also your guests want to come a little bit earlier, stay a little bit longer. It really is such an enhanced opportunity to really celebrate local food and beverage at Te Kaha. There are 3 feature bars, obviously that ground floor and level 1 concourse. There's a level 3 premium offering, which is actually what you can see in that picture there, as well as a kids corner, a student wedge, and again, just noting that all of those food and beverage units are at accessible height. That picture there is an example of the level 1 concourse on a event night, concert night. So you see on the right there, that's what we're referring to as one of the super units, so one of the retail units that offers a broad range of food and beverage. And then on the left there, how you can see that view out to the field of play from the concourse. The guest experience, so again, really good quality acoustics have been achieved through a fairly detailed design process and some incredible modelling that's been done by the team. Industry best practice seat size, which is such an important factor for the guest experience, and the majority of the sight lines for all seats are of a premium standard. So C90 is a premium sightline standard, and I think it's around 85% of the seats in Te Kaha are at that level. Again, good Wi-Fi and DES. There are 110% of building code amenities, so the last thing anybody wants to be doing is queuing for the toilet when you can be enjoying the event, and so it makes for a far enhanced guest experience. Again, smooth ingress and egress, 3 passenger lifts, 2 escalators, and that covered arena, really fundamental in that protection from the elements. So in terms of commercial opportunities and revenue streams, as I've said before, we have analysed the investment case in the current day, as well as obviously in relation to the developed design. And we're seeing a far enhanced commercial opportunity, so around 50% uplift from what we've seen in the investment case. And that has some benefit, obviously, to offset some of the increased life cycle costs of an increased capital cost. But you'll see there some of the opportunities, some obviously were in the investment case, but some are in addition to. So naming rights, ticketing, porridge, membership sales. There are 88 open corporate reserves. So an open corporate reserve is a collection of 11 seats with its own fridge, so for another premium corporate offering. Digital advertising. So across Te Kaha there are 300 digital screens. Dual level fixed ribbon boards, so on the field of play and at level 1, which is something that no other venue in New Zealand has. The opportunity for future retail tenancies on the ground floor. Again, not only a commercial opportunity, but an opportunity to breathe life and heart day to day at Te Kaha. Opportunities around precinct activation, not only on event day, but outside of event day. Corporate and retail food and beverage, venue hire for all events. And again, just noting this is really such a unique venue, will be really competitive and will attract good sponsorship opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. So moving on to a summary of the Dnc contract. Christchurch City Council is the principal to the contract. The Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited support this approach. Council owns the land and will own the asset. Council is the known entity for the contractor to contract with, and the council will need to guarantee the performance of the Dnc contract, with delegations to deliver to Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited. That is the simplest and most efficient approach for this contract. And during the pre-contract services agreement, this is the approach we took, so it's proven and it works. The scope is locked in with the approval of the developed design. So the design we've just been through, that will be locked in. It's a lump sum contract, no cost escalations, single point responsibility on the contractor for design and construction. There is a key clause or key clauses in the contract regarding fit for purpose delivery, and the onus is on us as the Project Delivery Limited to hold the contractor to account to deliver the specification that we have agreed and signed up to, and they have agreed and signed up to as part of this contract. The detailed design will be completed by the end of this calendar year, and as principal, we will recommend to you the approval of that. There are very few risks that are sitting outside the contractor's responsibility, and this is because we have been working on this with B6 WAPAC for the last 16 months. And I want to assure you that these expectations, when we went to market, were set and understood by all the parties who participated in the RFP process. That is why we were disappointed on the 27th of May not to have received the compliant bid. But in the passage of additional time, because there's a lot of pressure in the marketplace, we were able to achieve the Dnc contract that we set out to achieve at the beginning of this process. There are liquidated damages as council's redress for any program delays, and they are quite comprehensive. The COVID-19 risk for program and cost sit with the contractor. However, in exceptional circumstances for unforeseeable and critical path impacts that cannot be mitigated, and it's a high hurdle to achieve, the contractor can get a program variation, but not a cost increase. So there is plenty of incentive there to keep within the program of April 2026. So our experts, both the experience of the board members and the risk assurance advisor, Peter Nevin, who's online, is that over the 16-month period, we have developed a favourable contract in the current market conditions or current market circumstances. Again, we have Lisa here, we have Peter online to take questions on this at the end of the presentation. The DNC program, we made a recommendation late last year to approve early works. We reconfirmed a certain amount of those early works on the 27th of May. Those groundworks are underway, followed by foundations, then the sequence, the building sequence will then to erect the bowl, and then throughout that erection of the bowl will be the roof structure. The reason why the program has moved out to the 20th of April 2026 is that B6 Watpac have taken the time to test the market to make sure they've got adequate allowances for COVID and for weather delays, and also to finalise the construction methodology to build this project. And therefore, they now have locked up to that date and they take the program risk. Assurance has been extensive and comprehensive, both throughout the project. So again, the contract form was set when we went to market in November 2020. Those conditions were very clear, and we have been working through that with the contract over that period of time. So this arrangement just didn't occur overnight. Simpson Grierson have been involved right throughout this project through the pre-contract services stage, and were involved with the negotiations with David Kennedy and the team with B6 Watpac over the last few months. Peter Nevin, as I mentioned before, has provided advice to the board throughout this project, and also has provided the gateway review for Treasury. Just want to remind everyone that we meet with Treasury every 2 weeks to keep them updated on the project. ACOM were appointed at the pre-contract services stage and have been involved in price verification and expert review, and also providing recommendations on the contingency. RCP have been involved right from the beginning of the project and involved in most of the big projects in New Zealand, and have provided support and advice to the board on the project management and programming. VO, as I've said earlier, has been an integral part of the team, and in particular working closely with us on design and working closely with B6 Watpac and others to understand the whole of life cost and to be comfortable that the design scope will deliver the operational benefits that we are seeking. If we proceed with the project, Kaha Project Delivery Limited have spent an enormous amount of time working on the project delivery team and the structure and the systems and the processes that are required to manage this project going forward. Health and safety, environmental, sustainability, quality assurance, and overall risk management are our highest priorities, amongst other priorities that we are required to deliver under the contract. The total project budget, as we have spent a lot of time talking to you about, that price has been verified by our experts. We are confident as the board and the project team that we can deliver within the total project budget. We've had expert advice on the appropriate contingency sum to manage the few council retained risks during the Dnc contract delivery stage. Those contingency sums, based on the recommendation we've made to you, will sit with both the Kaha Project Delivery Limited and with council. And the contingency sums are within the total project budget. So the recommendations, in summary, to approve B6 Watpac to carry out this contract, to delegate authority to the Chief Executive at Christchurch City Council to execute a letter of acceptance. Our bid from B6 Watpac expires tomorrow. So we have agreed a letter of acceptance between Council and B6 Watpac if the Council agreed to proceed with the project, and we expect to execute the full contract by mid-August. And as you're aware, the groundworks are underway, so effectively construction is underway. To approve the overall total project cost of $683,165,830, and that includes all of the costs, including the contingencies, as I have just referred to them. Approve the delegations to the board and contingencies as set out in the detailed project costings. They are confidential, and we have shared that information with you. And to acknowledge that under the funding agreement, we have met all the requirements from the Crown. That paperwork has been shared with the Crown, and we expect to receive that confirmation later today. So we have carried out all the requirements under the funding agreement. As I said, we've met with them every 2 weeks. So thank you. That's the conclusion of our presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
This is just for completeness, because I know the answer to this question, but can you explain why the contingencies need to remain undisclosed at this stage?
Well, we don't want to spend them for a start. They are amounts that have been provided as expert advice only to Council. There's an enormous amount of detail sitting behind those numbers, and they are confidential to us, and we don't want to disclose to anyone what those numbers are, because we don't want to spend them.
Yeah, and the other issue might be the nature of the decision that we made today. If we were back in the market, it's not something that you'd want to be in the public arena.
That's right. So if the decision was pause and we decided to go down another track, then all this information are confidential to the parties, because we'd be back out in the market, dare I say it, going through this whole process again.
Yeah, and I guess the reassurance that you're able to give us, though, is that the contingency that has been set aside, you've got a high level of confidence in that as a board.
So the risk management process associated with this project began 16 months ago. So we've held extensive risk workshops right throughout the concept design, prelim design, develop design phases, and they have been reported every month to the board, and we have a detailed information sitting behind these numbers with expert advice, so the board is comfortable to recommend the contingencies.
Thank you. And I guess my last question is around, the nature of a fixed price contract in the present market. One, congratulations. But two, perhaps could we get some commentary from the independent assurance expert who you've, identified today also holds the Gateway Review process very close on behalf of Treasury as well?
Yeah, I'll just make one comment and I'll hand over to Peter. Yeah. Again, this is something that we've worked through over the 16-month term of the project. It was very clear right from the outset that this is what our expectation was. We understand why B6 Watpac were having difficulty locking up to that because of the change in market circumstances, but the additional time gave them the time they needed to lock up to that requirement. But Peter, are you online?
Peter's not online.
Oh, he's not online
Oh.
just yet.
Oh, right. Can we?
He's been contacted.
He's not available just yet.
Well, can we come back to that?
Yeah,
we'll try and
come back
contact
to
them.
it.
We'll come
I've
back
got
to that.
Sam McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Barry and team, for that really comprehensive report. Just two from me, and they probably are, apologies, they may be stupid, but they're more for the public benefit going forward. The first one is around, so obviously, again, like Leanne, the fixed price is really, really good. But in terms of the risk sitting with us as principal, or I guess as you as our agent, can you just talk through what you can in the public domain as to what risks, except for COVID, sit with us? Because I think there's been a lot of public commentary about a fixed price being quite challenging.
Yeah.
And can you just walk us through that?
Okay, so to be absolutely clear, any escalations associated with labour, costs, or materials, or quantities are all sitting with the contractor. We've been through this process over a long period of time, and the risk workshops have helped inform that. So there's a quantitative risk assessment that's taking place during the risk management workshops so that all parties understand where the risks sit between the parties. one of the strategies we brought to the council late last year was a commitment to early works. So it gave B6 WAPAC two opportunities to get out and test the market early, to be able to be in this position, but also it allowed us to get underway with some of those ground improvement works. So all our understanding of the ground conditions at this point in time, that risk now sits with B6 WAPAC. There still are some unknowns, so we haven't completed the full archaeological search of the site. So we've made allowance in our contingency for some of those risks.
So just in a practical sense, if you were to list the three key risks, or the however many there might be, and that sit with us as the principal, what are they in a practical sense?
In a practical sense, there's some ground condition risks that sit with us that are not known at this point in time. So we know that the risks are there, but they haven't been realised and may never be realised. Secondly, because there are enormous amount of paperwork sitting behind this with drawings and specifications, there could be something that we have missed during the confirmation of the developed design scope. So we've allowed some contingency for that. And dare I say, the last one, which I hate to point to, but in the current market, there's a lot of litigation risk associated with construction contracts. And that part of that contingency that we've got there is in the event we get some litigation. Don't want to say this to B6 WAPAC, but look, the developed design contract and the way we have negotiated the contract and the contract terms that are in there, the advice that we have received is there's very little risk sitting on the principal side because of the early contractor involvement that we've had. But we are in a challenging construction market, right? And when the contractors get under pressure, there is litigation risk. We've been through a careful selection process to select B6 WAPAC, and we have done back in 2021 when they were selected, extensive investigations around them and their approach to dealing with the principal. So we hope through this partnership approach that we've taken, well, not hope, we believe through the partnership approach that we have taken, we have mitigated that. But we believe we have a responsibility as part of the contingency amount to make some provision for that.
I think that is.
So in summary, they are the three key ones. But look, our responsibility during the delivery phase is to proactively manage these risks. So we catch them early and we work with B6 WAPAC as a partnership, even though they have responsibility for the bulk of the risk, to manage them to get the right outcome. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we need that design, we need that specification within the budget, and we need it delivered by the program date.
That's great. And just the only other one, Leanne, is around, so you mentioned about the design coming back to the principal in December, potentially this year. Again, it's just because there's so much public interest in it. Can you just confirm for me, I guess, in terms of the approach, we let or we don't let the contract effectively now. We've got the underlying fundamentals that shape that design. I guess from a worst case scenario, what happens if the contractor gets a month in and goes, actually, we can't deliver on that design in that sense? Is there any risk to us there, or what are you expecting to come back as that design in December?
Oh, look, we don't expect surprises with the design. There's been a comprehensive design process so far. On our part, we've made enough inquiry about the design process. So we have been talking to the designers to get assurance that they are running good assurance processes sitting behind that design. We've had Lewis Bradford, who've also given the board a very comprehensive review of the structural risk, and both parties know where those risks are, and the design is required to take consideration of all those items.
Sorry, but
just to finish my answer. But again, that is our responsibility during this next phase, not to wait until the end of the year to get the detailed design.
So to put it a simpler way for people watching online, is there any way that the design could fundamentally change and that we would have to wear more costs? So
the design won't fundamentally change. We are locking in the scope right now.
Yeah, perfect. Great, thank you.
Do you want to reaffirm that?
Oh, I can reaffirm. Yeah. It's far too far down the track.
I mean, this is a partnership with VO and Kaha Project Delivery.
Sarah Templeton.
Thanks so much. Couple of quick questions.
when we signed off last July, then August, there was discussion over capacity. And one of the things is that people were concerned about capacity for concerts and concerned that it was only 36,000 with the smaller size stadium. And so we bumped it up and we were told it would be 41 at that point, but it's come back, it's still 36,000 capacity for concerts. Why is that?
So at that point in time, based on where the design was at, there was more ability to the sight lines and some of those more detailed things hadn't been taken into consideration. That was purely a calculation of how many people you could get on the field of play, plus the bowl. So now the design is at a point where we've got far more detail around egress and safe ingress, and 36,800 is where it is at the moment.
So that puts us on a par with Forsyth Bar for concert capacity.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But taking into consideration all the other benefits around Te Kaha versus 4-bar.
Oh yeah,
So,
I'm just
and
yeah.
Christchurch.
I was just surprised to see 36 in the documentation we've had, given the increase in seats and stuff. So yeah. So what's not covered by the Dnc contract that we are still expecting to do? And they tend to be things that within the budget.
Yeah.
So we've, the digital billboards, we've had advice back that they're not covered in DNC, they're separate. Hydrotherapy pools, those kind of things. What other things are we likely to have costs within that, and where does that sit? Does that sit separate budget, or are they within the contingency?
No, they're not part of the contingency. They're part of the total project budget.
Yeah.
There are items around food and beverage where ourselves and VO believe that they are the better party to procure those items, and we don't have to pay a margin on top of that to the contractor for part of that. So the items that aren't in the DNC contract but are part of the total project budget and are not part of the contingency, we have carefully identified what those items are, and we have worked with VO to work out how the procurement strategy might work. Some of those items are still subject to commercial arrangements, and if we can get those commercial arrangements, they will lead to cost savings for the project.
Yeah. So are there things that we're hoping to do that aren't within the budget because we're hoping for commercial partners with sponsorship and stuff?
Yeah, so replay screens and ribbon boards are two that are outside of the total budget, and they have always been outside. So in the investment case, they were always subject to a commercial arrangement, and that is how we will progress to seek to a third-party arrangement for replay screens and ribbon boards.
Yeah, okay. And they're the dual ribbon boards that go around the grant that we're hoping to have in permanently. Yeah. And so what type of costs might we be up for if we don't find a commercial partner for those? I know we've struggled with some of our venues and facilities for partnerships.
But it's a fairly standard commercial arrangement to enter into, so we're pretty confident that we'll be able to secure those. In terms of the ribbon boards, most people bump them in as part of an event day cost anyway. That's what happens at Orange Theory, etc. So that wouldn't necessarily be an additional capital cost. It would be a cost of obviously the event day. And in terms of the replay screens, I think we can be pretty confident that that'd be a third-party arrangement, and that's the way that we're progressing.
Okay, thanks. And of all of the events that are listed there in the investment case and those kind of things, which ones could be held at other venues within Christchurch if they weren't at Te Kaha? And sort of which ones can only be at Te Kaha?
Yeah, so look, in the most, and I've actually done a bit of that work, so obviously with the assumption that Orange Theory Stadium will be decommissioned, which it will need to be,
absolutely.
It's a temporary stadium, so any of those large sporting events will not be able to be held at an alternative venue, so anything over around that 20,000. So Super Rugby, All Black Rugby. Large concerts, again, there wouldn't be an alternative venue. So Hagley Park is obviously a large space, but requires a large amount of temporary infrastructure and a somewhat compromised experience from even a corporate experience type of. So in fairness, the only other events that could be at other venues would be things like reduced concert mode. So Christchurch Arena, obviously that 8,888 capacity, so not delivering a 13,800, but that would be an alternative. And then your corporate functions, so there are obviously a range of venues around Christchurch, not only venues, Otatahi venues, but obviously Te Pai as well. So in some of those smaller corporate events, there are alternative venues, but for anything material, there wouldn't be an alternative venue.
So the big sports game, the sports games and the concerts are the key ones, really.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Can I tease out a little bit from you, Caroline, about esports? Obviously, that's not something we're particularly focused on, but I've been looking at the numbers around what looks like an exponential growth curve, particularly around Gen Y and Z, who I do not relate to, but apparently, while other sports might be diminishing, that this is on a huge trajectory. With young people around the world, with stadiums being filled with 30,000 people, and but people sharing the online experience with millions of other people at the same time. So it seems to me like an extraordinary opportunity. So will we be ensuring that the infrastructure to support esports at Te Kaha will be part of the design process?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. It's I don't understand it either.
No.
But massively fastest growing sport in the world, and so from both a large scale, so those more 30,000 type covered arenas are highly in demand, as well as some of the smaller events, so more that sort of 10,000. And the design has absolutely been reflective of the future of those events. So one of the risks with having a lighter a lighter roof is that you can't rig everything but they actually build up from the ground. So for those larger ones, you build the screens up from the ground. So essentially for a 30,000 big esport event, which will, again, amazing opportunity for Te Kaha to be on the world stage. It's streaming to millions, absolutely millions. But then also for some of the smaller, potentially more regular ones, there's the southern end. So again, that bowl, you can rig from the roof. So it is a really flexible design and able to deliver esports events.
Right. Great. Any other questions? Oh, Yanni. Sorry.
Thank you. I was interested in the corporate functions that you referred to, and obviously I just wanted to know how you've assessed the Te Pai corporate function market versus what you're predicting at the new arena.
So we have not assessed Te Pai in its, in one respect. We've just looked at the portfolio of assets across the city, and we believe, and we have actually lowered the number from 200 in the investment case to our modelling, which is more around that 150, and feel that there is certainly enough content and enough demand. Again, it is a fair way away, but based on what we see not only today, but also we've had those assumptions validated by EY, and that we do feel that's a realistic amount of corporate events. Again, with Te Pai, big, large-scale expos, as well as smaller meeting spaces. So it is also a slightly different proposition, but we feel those numbers are reflective of what we can deliver.
Right. And does that take into account the assessment of places like the Wigram Air Force Museum and that as a function venue?
Yeah, so we've looked obviously at the Venues Otatahi portfolio, which includes the
Right.
Air Force Museum. So again, they're all quite unique experiences, and that's the really wonderful thing actually about the portfolio. But we do feel that that is a realistic number and an additional offering as part of the portfolio.
Based on the size of the stadium, do you know what the expected percentage of capacity will be in terms of the attendances? Like, have you got a figure in mind around at what level of percentage of capacity would have people coming as a benchmark?
So do you mean what the forecast attendance is for?
Yeah, based on capacity.
So look, what we've done in the modelling, and as per the investment case, has been quite conservative, just to make sure that we're not overly optimistic in some of that modelling. So for example, Super Rugby, the modelling is based on, say, 15,000. But again, that's quite conservative. You can really imagine for the first few years, and again, this will be a potential upside, is there's going to be a real demand to come to Te Kaha. It's a really unique, different experience, and one that our community will be so proud. And so you can see that demand will be there, and the capacities, we're hoping, in the modelling are conservative. Yeah, but I can't give you an exact number of how many are actually going to turn up.
Right. Okay. And do you just interested in? So we've had I don't know if you've seen all the submissions, but we've had the multi-purpose arena trust has made a submission. They've presented the plans that they drew up initially for the multi-purpose arena, and they've asked. The architect has asked if we could pause and reconsider, and seems to be suggesting that we're missing the opportunity to get synergy around things like public transport, exhibition space. Now, I know that that was a few years ago, and the city's developed a lot since then. But when I look at your design, it's really hard to tell what auxiliary functions you're building into the arena to raise additional revenue to offset the cost of construction and the cost of operation. And it's really hard to see how the edges will be activated, which was one of the key things that came out of Sharon idea when we did our central city plan in the central city, around having buildings that activate the street frontage rather than turn their back on it. Can you give us any sense of what the auxiliary functions will be added to increase revenue and offset the cost of capital, and also how that's actually going to activate the streets around it?
So I guess there's a couple of aspects to that question. Activating the precinct is I guess one aspect, and so the way that the public realm has been designed will enable activations of that area. Now, what exactly that looks like, it could be a combination of more community type events as well as kind of fan zones. There are also the shell and core opportunities, so those retail tenancies in the base of the arena, and they could open out to the outside of the arena. So instead of being internally accessed, could be externally accessed. So again, that's another activation. We are also interrogating another couple of options that would bring absolute life to that part of the area pretty much 20 hours a day, but that's something we can't quite talk about just yet. But we are wholeheartedly looking at other opportunities to generate revenue. The other aspect of the design is it genuinely is really, really flexible, and there are a lot of spaces. Obviously, you wouldn't purpose-built it for every single thing. I think the inherent thing about Te Kaha is it's genuinely flexible. So if you look at some of the spaces, for instance, that northern stage pocket, now that could be an expo because you're under the roof, and then the concourses as well. Like, you've actually got some wonderful complementary spaces versus designing it wholeheartedly for every one of those things.
Right, sorry, just are we likely to see bars and cafes around the edge on the ground floor that have a relationship with the street? Is that sort of incorporated into the
there's
design?
only those two shell and core opportunities within Te Kaha,
Right.
and then the rest are internal opportunities. I can't comment obviously on what will happen outside of the precinct around the streets, but that's what's on offer for Te Kaha.
Right. Okay. And just the final question from me is in regards to a number of the submitters have raised concern around rugby's contribution, and I know in the past we've asked if we can talk to New Zealand Rugby about a commitment to a type of tier games being held in the city as you know, a commitment to the new arena. My understanding is that they've rejected any certainty around the types of tier games that would be awarded, and that we have to go through a competitive bidding environment. Has there been any further discussions based on the new cost escalation and the strong desire by rugby for us to build and get on and build the arena about giving us some certainty around the tier or even just actual fixtures in recognition of the increased cost that we're facing? And if not, are we able to write to them and seek some sort of formal agreement?
So we haven't had a discussion around committing capital or event content with New Zealand Rugby. I think what's really fundamental here is the commercial strategy needs to be really strategic. We need to think quite cleverly about how we, over the next few years, look at options for exploring other commercial arrangements, exploring other capital contributions, exploring partnerships. But I think we have to do it in a strategic way. So I know that obviously, you know, we Crusaders, Canterbury Rugby, wholeheartedly committed to this venue. And we'll, over the next few years, work together around what that looks like as a partnership. When it comes to New Zealand Rugby, at this point in time, it is a competitive process, but the most competitive we can be on that front is that we've got a wonderful venue and one that the All Blacks will want to play at, and that is exactly what Te Kaha will deliver. But I'm not saying that those conversations will not end here. We've just got some work to do over the next few years around both of those aspects.
Thank you very much. It looks like that's the Phil Major.
Thank you very much, guys. Just if we press the go button on this, you will use the government's money first.
That's correct.
Yeah, and that will take us towards the tail end of next year before we had to start using our own, so to speak.
Yeah, so the cash flow we have
Yeah.
that's been presented to the board
Excellent.
looks like the end of 2023, beginning of 2024.
Great, thank you.
Sarah? And then
Thanks.
Celeste. Sorry.
Do we have an updated BCR for the stadium?
No, we don't have an updated BCR. Ernst & Young obviously did that work in the investment case. We did talk to them about that, but it was a large piece of work to do in too short a period of time.
Yeah, and the submission and the article in public by Nick Lovett, which looked at the marginal benefits between different types of stadia within the central city still. Sort of asked for that. The response that I got back was only on having a stadium, not the difference between two types, and doing that over time. And I'm wondering why that is. I mean, I sent it through a month ago.
I'm not sure I can answer that question. Did that come to me?
Yeah, it did. And I mean, the response I got was a really good Venues o Tatahi. This is why we need a stadium response. And then I sent it back through the organisation to see if we could get something that actually addressed the concept that was raised, which was whether we could have a stadium built on site over time. I don't know if you remember that being in the media and things, one of the submissions that came through about a month ago, and the marginal difference. So having something in town, and it's the difference between having something maybe slightly smaller and temporary style, and something that's really flashed straight off. But also you could do it sooner and then build it over time. But there was no sort of work done on that.
No, and that's not work we have done or have been asked to do. The question was brought to my attention was a relocation of what was a more temporary type of structure like Orange Theory Stadium. So the commentary I provided feedback on was the compromised experience, the compromised at a point in time structure. That was the commentary I provided, which was a relocation of the temporary stadium into the central city, and that was our view on that. I wasn't asked to do any analysis of a.
Okay, it was you're having that, and the difference between whether that would bring an extra 5,000 people or whatever. Yeah.
I just wonder whether would that be within the terms of the funding agreement that we have with the Crown?
Yeah, well, it certainly wouldn't meet any of the design.
No, it was about. I mean, I sent the article through. I mean, it's clearly not being done. That's fine.
Celeste Donovan.
Hi, thanks. Can you just elaborate a little bit on the being a community facility? What will be some of the community sort of grassroots uses of the stadium, and will those groups have to pay a fee to use the space? I'm aware that we do have a lot of recreational facilities that we're still trying to activate, and some of those groups have said that they're struggling to pay the fees to use their own facilities. So just would like a little bit more information on how it'll be used for the people that, might not be going to the games but want to use it for another purpose.
Look, I mean, I probably can't tell you exactly what it will be used for and or what that fee structure or lack thereof might look like. I think what's fundamental, like all of the other community-owned assets, and certainly the ones that we're responsible for managing, is that it is a genuine priority that the community have access to and are connected with their venues, and that will be no different with Te Kaha. And so if you think about even school rugby, club rugby, some of the events that might be held at Hagley Park that potentially could come over into the public realm, I think there's plenty of opportunity. Now, whether that's on a discounted basis like we do at the town hall, for example, or whether it's on another basis. There are other ways to kind of develop arrangements that mean that we can still sort of cover a whole bunch of, relatively significant costs, as well as providing that opportunity. So there's a lot to be worked through, and I think this is what we can do over the next few years, is to see how else we can build access to and connection with the community with Te Kaha.
Thank you. Pauline Cotter?
Yeah, thank you. Really good presentation. Thank you. The one mega event every 6 years, is that like super conservative? Do you think we'd likely to attract more than that? Or is it about right?
I think it's the mega part of it, isn't it? It's I think it comes down to how often those big events happen, because a mega event is something like a FIFA or Rugby World Cup, and they only sort of go around
Every 4 years.
that often. So I think that's probably where the mega part of it. I think the ability to track major events is absolutely able to be achieved. It's probably those mega, that probably actually more comes down to the timing of those types of events.
True,
versus our ability to attract them.
Yeah, and then the other question is the time frame to complete this. Is that about par for the course, or is it a bit long? 4 years now?
Look, I think it's a sign of the market and the supply chain challenges in the market and availability for labour. So it's all those factors. I think when we started on this pathway, we expected a shorter period of time. But I think in this market, for all major infrastructure projects, we think this timeline is conservative but realistic.
Yep. Okay.
And again, we have to note that the risk sits with B6 WAPAC, and so they have tested the market and they have come up with a program delivery date.
Thank you.
The final question from me. Josiah Tula Malihi spoke this morning about the significance of the site to the Pacifica community. I know it's been raised before, but can we get some reassurance in that regard with respect to the request that he made to us?
I spoke to him just before the start of the community consultation this morning, and I will meet with him, with Neil Cox and Carolyn and maybe David as well next week. Have to say, during this community consultation period, we've put a lot of those discussions on pause, waiting for the decision. It will be a priority if we get a yes.
Great, thank you very much. All right, well look, thank you very much for the presentation this morning. I'm not going to proceed to the finance report with 9 minutes to go. I'd rather that we adjourned and came back at 2 o'clock this afternoon, deal with the finance report, and then we'll enter into the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.